The cemetery security footage captured the moment. A dying woman collapsing beside her son's grave, a woman in a wheelchair rushing to help her, and then both of them crying in each other's arms. 7 years of silent visits, 7 years of unanswered questions, 7 years of guilt and grief, all resolved in one conversation. The stranger visiting Private James Sullivan's grave wasn't a stranger at all. She was the reason he was in that grave. And the mother's final words to her would change everything. "You're my child now, too." Before we begin, I want to ask you something. Have you ever owed someone a debt you could never repay? Have you ever carried guilt for being alive when someone else isn't? If so, share your story in the comments below. I read every single one. And who knows, maybe the next story we tell here on Veterans Past Stories will help you find peace. Arlington National Cemetery, Section 60, the sacred ground where America's most recent war heroes rest. Every Tuesday at 2 p.m. for the past 7 years, Lieutenant Rebecca Stone wheeled herself through the rows of white marble headstones to the same grave. Row 18, Plot 47, Private First Class James Michael Sullivan, born March 15th, 1996, died August 3rd, 2018. Bronze Star, Purple Heart. Rebecca never brought flowers. She knew the groundskeepers removed them within days. Instead, she brought letters, handwritten pages she'd spent the week composing, updates about her life, apologies she'd repeated so many times the words had lost their meaning, but never their weight. At 35 years old, Rebecca had been visiting this grave since she was 28. Since the day she left Walter Reed Medical Center in a wheelchair, having lost the use of her legs in the same explosion that had taken James Sullivan's life. The routine never varied. Arrive at 2 p.m., position her wheelchair directly in front of the headstone, read that week's letter aloud, though no one was there to hear, sit in silence for exactly 1 hour, leave at 3 p.m., wheeling herself back through the cemetery to the accessible parking lot. She never saw the woman who came every Thursday. Catherine Sullivan was 63 years old, though grief had aged her beyond her years. Since her son's death 7 years ago, she had visited his grave weekly, sitting on the small folding stool she carried, talking to the son who would never answer. She had noticed the wheelchair tracks in the grass, fresh tracks, appearing like clockwork, always there when she arrived on Thursdays. At first, she'd assumed it was another veteran, perhaps someone from James's unit, but none of the soldiers she'd met at the funeral had mentioned a female officer in a wheelchair. Catherine had asked the cemetery staff about it. They'd confirmed that yes, a woman visited Plot 47 every Tuesday. Yes, she came alone. Yes, she stayed for exactly an hour. No, they didn't know who she was or why she came. For 7 years, this mystery had gnawed at Catherine. Who was this woman? How had she known James? Why had she never introduced herself, never left a note, never acknowledged the mother who mourned in the same space just 1 day later? Catherine had tried changing her schedule, coming on Tuesdays instead. But her chemotherapy appointments were on Tuesdays, and by the time they finished, it was always too late. The mysterious visitor had already come and gone, because Catherine Sullivan was dying. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, diagnosed 6 months ago. The doctors had given her weeks, maybe a month if she was lucky. She was not afraid of death. She would finally be reunited with her son. But she couldn't die without knowing who this woman was, why she visited James's grave, what connection she had to the boy Catherine had raised. On this particular Thursday in October, Catherine arrived at the cemetery with a plan. She had convinced her daughter Marie to drop her off early, at 1 p.m., an hour before the mysterious visitor's usual time. "Mom, are you sure about this?" Marie had asked, helping her mother from the car. "You're so weak. What if she doesn't show up?" "She'll show up," Catherine said with certainty. "She hasn't missed a Tuesday in 7 years. She won't start now." So Catherine sat on her folding stool beside James's grave, wrapped in a blanket despite the mild autumn weather, and waited. At 1:58 p.m., she heard the distinctive sound of wheelchair wheels on the paved path. Her heart began to race. At 2 p.m. exactly, a woman appeared. She was younger than Catherine expected, mid-30s with light brown hair pulled back in a ponytail. She wore jeans, a simple gray sweater, and a military pin on her collar. Her wheelchair was clearly a long-term fixture, not a temporary medical device, customized, well-worn, an extension of her body rather than a burden. The woman stopped abruptly when she saw Catherine sitting beside the grave. For a long moment, neither spoke. "James saved your life 7 years ago. I'm asking you to complete his mission by truly living that life. Fall in love, find purpose, create beauty, experience joy, do all the things James never got to do, and know that every moment of happiness you experience is a tribute to him. You are my daughter now, and I will always be proud of you. With love, Catherine." Rebecca read the letter 3 times, tears blurring the words. Then she wheeled herself to her desk, pulled out a fresh sheet of paper, and began to write. Not to James this time, but to Catherine. Dear Mom, I accept. I am a Sullivan, and I promise I will live the life both James and you gave me. I will be free. I will be happy. I will honor the sacrifice by making it count. Thank you for giving me permission to live. Your daughter, Rebecca. The following Tuesday, Rebecca returned to Arlington National Cemetery, but this time, she didn't just visit Plot 47. She visited Catherine's grave too, placed right beside her son's, just as she'd requested. Rebecca read her letter aloud to both of them. And for the first time in 7 years, the words weren't apologies. They were promises. Promises to live fully, to love deeply, to find purpose and meaning in the life James had given her and Catherine had blessed. She would still visit every Tuesday, but now she understood she wasn't visiting out of guilt. She was visiting out of love, the love of a daughter for the family that had claimed her, even in death. Before you go, I want to hear from you. Have you ever found family in unexpected places? Have you ever been given permission to forgive yourself by someone who had every right to hold a grudge? Share your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if you believe that healing comes through connection and that family is defined by love rather than blood, hit that subscribe button for more powerful stories from Veterans Past Stories. Will you come to my funeral? Will you let my family meet you? I want them to know who you are, what you meant to James, how you're keeping his memory alive. Rebecca hesitated. Mrs. Sullivan, I don't think your family would want. They need to meet you. My daughter Marie, she struggled so much with James's death. She needs to hear your story, to understand that his sacrifice had purpose. Please, this is my last request. How could Rebecca refuse a dying woman's final wish? I'll be there. Thank you. Catherine reached into her bag with trembling hands and pulled out a small photo album. These are pictures of James, growing up in high school at basic training graduation. I want you to have them, so you can remember him as more than the soldier who saved you, so you can know the boy he was before the war. Rebecca took the album with reverent care, opening it to see a young James, gap-toothed and smiling in a Little League uniform, awkward and lanky at his high school prom, proud and serious in his army dress blues. He was beautiful, Rebecca whispered. He was my heart. Catherine's voice was fading now, exhaustion overwhelming her. Rebecca, I need to tell you something else, something important. What is it? I've been so alone since James died. His father passed years ago. Marie has her own family, her own life. I've spent 7 years feeling like I lost my whole purpose when I lost my son. But meeting you today, I don't feel alone anymore. Rebecca looked up from the photos, confused. You've been visiting my son's grave for 7 years, Catherine said. You've been talking to him, writing to him, honoring him. You've been doing what I've been doing, keeping him alive in the only way we can. We're not so different, you and I. We both lost James. We both love him. We're both carrying his memory. Mrs. Sullivan, call me Catherine. Please, because I want you to know. She gripped Rebecca's hand with surprising strength. You may not have given birth to James, but you've honored his life and his sacrifice more than anyone. You've made his death mean something. And that makes you family. Rebecca's breath caught in her throat. I don't have much time left, Catherine continued, but I need you to know that I forgive you, even though there's nothing to forgive. I thank you for being someone worth James's sacrifice, for carrying his memory, for loving him enough to visit his grave every week for 7 years. And I want you to know, she paused, tears streaming down her face. You're my child now too. James gave you life, and I'm giving you permission to live it fully, without guilt, without shame. You're my daughter now, Rebecca, and I want you to be free. Rebecca collapsed forward, her head on Catherine's lap, sobbing like she hadn't sobbed in 7 years. And Catherine, weak and dying, stroked her hair and whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart, it's okay. James would want this. He would want you to be free. He would want you to be loved. You're not alone anymore." They stayed like that until Marie arrived at 3:30 p.m. to collect her mother. She found them still together, her dying mother and a stranger in a wheelchair, holding each other like family, because now they were. 3 weeks later, Rebecca attended Catherine Sullivan's funeral. She sat beside Marie and met James's aunts, uncles, and cousins. She told them about their nephew's heroism, his sacrifice, his final moments. And when Marie asked if Rebecca would help her go through James's things, the letters he'd saved, the photos from deployment, the memories they could preserve together, Rebecca said yes. 6 months after Catherine's death, Rebecca received a package. Inside was a letter from Marie in a small wooden box. The letter read, "Mom asked me to give this to you after she was gone. She said you'd know what it meant." Inside the box were Catherine's weekly letters to James. 7 years worth of letters, written to a son who couldn't read them anymore. And on top of the stack, a final letter addressed to Rebecca. "My dear daughter, I'm writing this knowing I won't be here when you read it. By now, I hope you've started to believe what I told you in the cemetery, that you are worthy, that you are loved, that you are free. I'm giving you these letters because they were meant for James, but now they're meant for you too. You're carrying him forward. You're living the life he gave you. That makes you the rightful keeper of his memory. But more than that, I'm giving them to you because I want you to know that you have a family. Marie knows about you now. She wants to stay in touch. James's cousins want to meet you. You're not an outsider anymore. You're one of us. You're a Sullivan, if you'll accept the name. Rebecca pulled the folded letter from her lap. Every week for 7 years, I've come here to apologize, to tell him about my life, the life he gave me, the life I don't deserve, to promise him that I'll make it count for something, that his sacrifice won't be wasted. She handed the letter to Catherine with trembling hands. This week's letter, you can read it if you want. They're all the same. Guilt, gratitude, apologies, updates on a life I'm living for 2 people. Catherine took the letter but didn't unfold it. Instead, she looked at Rebecca, really looked at her, seeing not just the soldier who'd survived, but the woman who'd been carrying the weight of that survival for 7 years. May I ask you something? Catherine said. Anything. In 7 years of visiting my son's grave, you never once tried to contact me. Why? Rebecca's answer came immediately, as if she'd been waiting 7 years to say it. Because I didn't think I deserved to. What right did I have to come to you, to seek your forgiveness or comfort, when your son is dead because of my mistake? I triggered that IED. My carelessness, my failure to see the wire quickly enough. That's what killed James. No, Catherine said firmly, her voice suddenly stronger than it had been all afternoon. James's choice killed James. You didn't push him toward that bomb. He chose to push you away from it. There's a difference. But if I had been more careful, if he had followed protocol and taken cover, he might have survived and you would have died. Are you saying you wish that had happened instead? Rebecca froze, unable to answer. My son made a choice, Catherine continued. A brave, selfless, heroic choice. He saw someone in danger and acted to save them. That's who James was. That's who I raised him to be. And you're taking that choice away from him by claiming it was your fault. I don't understand. You're making his death about your guilt instead of his heroism. You're centering yourself in his story instead of honoring his decision. James didn't die because of your mistake. He died because he made a conscious choice to value your life over his own. That was his decision to make, not yours to carry his guilt. The words hit Rebecca like a revelation. For 7 years, she had framed James's death as her failure. But Catherine was right. In doing so, she was diminishing James's agency, his choice, his sacrifice. He saved you, Catherine said, tears still streaming down her face. And you've spent 7 years punishing yourself for being saved. Do you think that's what he would want? Do you think he pushed you out of the way so you could spend the rest of your life trapped by guilt? I don't know what he would want. I do. He would want you to live, really live, not just exist, not just survive, but thrive. He would want his sacrifice to mean something, and it only means something if you let yourself truly live the life he gave you. Rebecca was crying so hard now she could barely breathe. 7 years of grief, guilt, and grief had built a wall around her heart, and Catherine's words were breaking it down brick by brick. I don't know how, Rebecca whispered. I don't know how to live without the guilt. Catherine reached out and took Rebecca's hand. Her grip was weak from illness, but her intention was strong. You start by accepting that you deserve to be saved, that you are worthy of the life James gave you, that his choice was valid and meaningful and right. How can I believe that when you've lost so much? Because James was my son, and I knew him better than anyone. He wasn't impulsive or reckless. He was thoughtful, deliberate, kind. If he chose to save you, it's because he saw something in you worth saving. Are you going to dishonor his judgment by insisting you weren't worth his sacrifice? Rebecca shook her head, unable to speak. Catherine squeezed her hand tighter. I've spent 7 years mourning my son, 7 years asking why? Why did he have to die? Why couldn't it have been someone else? I've been so angry at God, at the army, at the universe. But meeting you today, hearing the truth about how he died, I'm not angry anymore. How can you not be angry at me? I'm the reason, you're the reason his death had meaning. You're the proof that his sacrifice mattered. Look at you. You're here. You're alive. You're carrying his memory forward. That's not failure. That's his legacy. The 2 women sat in silence for a long moment, hands clasped, connected by shared grief and shared love for James Sullivan. Finally, Catherine spoke again, her voice growing weaker. Rebecca, I need to tell you something. I'm dying. Soon. Weeks, maybe less. I'm so sorry. Don't be. I'm ready. I'm tired. And knowing James is waiting for me makes death less frightening. She paused, gathering her strength for what she needed to say next. But I need to ask you something before I go. Anything. I'm sorry, Rebecca finally said, her voice carefully controlled. I didn't mean to intrude. I'll come back another time. No, Catherine said firmly, though her voice was weak. Please, stay. I've been trying to meet you for 7 years. Rebecca's hands tightened on her wheelchair wheels. You're his mother, Catherine Sullivan, and you are? Rebecca swallowed hard. Lieutenant Rebecca Stone. Army Rangers. I served with James. In the same unit? Yes, ma'am. Catherine studied the young woman's face. The careful blankness, the rigid posture, the hands that gripped the wheelchair, as if it were the only thing keeping her anchored to earth. This was not just a fellow soldier paying respects. This was something deeper. Why do you come here every week? Catherine asked. Why have you been coming for 7 years without ever introducing yourself? Rebecca looked down at her lap where a folded letter rested. Because I owe him a debt I can never repay. What kind of debt? The kind that costs a life. The words hung in the air between them. Catherine felt her heart constrict, understanding beginning to dawn. Tell me what happened, Catherine said. Please, the Army told me he died in an IED explosion, that he died quickly, that he didn't suffer. But they wouldn't give me details. They said the mission was classified, that most information couldn't be released. For 7 years, I've lived with this hole in my knowledge, this missing piece of how my son spent his final moments. Rebecca's eyes were wet now, tears threatening to spill. Mrs. Sullivan, I don't think I'm dying, Catherine interrupted bluntly. Pancreatic cancer. Weeks left, maybe less. I'm not asking for your comfort or your protection. I'm asking for the truth. You owe me that much. The words, you owe me, struck Rebecca like a physical blow. She did owe this woman. She owed her everything. We were on patrol, Rebecca began, her voice barely above a whisper. Kandahar province. Intelligence had identified a high-value target in a compound on the outskirts of the city. My unit was tasked with reconnaissance. Observe, document, report back. Not engagement, just information gathering. Catherine listened without interrupting, though tears were already streaming down her face. James was my RTO, radio telephone operator. He stayed close to me during the mission, maintaining communications with command. We'd worked together for 8 months. He was a good soldier, careful, professional, but also kind. He used to carry extra granola bars in his pack and give them to local kids we encountered. He talked about his family constantly, his mother who taught 3rd grade, his sister who was studying to be a nurse. He talked about you, Catherine whispered. All the time. He said his mother made the best chocolate chip cookies in Virginia, that she wrote him letters every week, long letters about what was happening at home, what his old friends were up to, what she was teaching her students. He saved every letter, kept them in a waterproof bag in his pack. Catherine made a sound between a sob and a laugh. I still write them. Every week I write a letter to James, just like I did when he was deployed. I keep them in a box in his old room. Rebecca's hands were shaking now. On our last mission together, we were moving through an alley toward our observation point. I was on point. I was the officer, so I led. James was 3 steps behind me. Standard formation. She paused, swallowing the memory that had haunted her for 7 years. I saw the wire too late, just a glint in the dust, barely visible. I tried to stop, tried to call out a warning, but my foot was already coming down. I knew what was about to happen. In that split second, I knew I was about to trigger an IED, that I was going to die because of my mistake. Catherine was gripping her blanket so tightly her knuckles had gone white. James saw it at the same time I did. But instead of diving away, instead of taking cover like training dictates, he lunged forward and shoved me. Hard, I flew backward, landed on my back 6 feet away. And James, Rebecca's voice broke completely. James was standing exactly where the pressure plate was when it detonated. The cemetery was silent except for the sound of 2 women crying. The explosion was catastrophic, Rebecca continued through her tears. James took the full force of it. He died instantly. That part the Army told you was true. He didn't suffer. But what they didn't tell you was that he died saving my life. He saw the danger and made a choice. He pushed me out of the blast radius and took my place. Catherine was sobbing now, her frail body shaking with the force of her grief. I survived with a shattered spine and multiple internal injuries. It took 3 surgeries to stabilize me, 6 months to accept that I would never walk again. But I was alive. Alive because James Sullivan gave his life for mine.